So is the U.S. going the way of Europe with the recession in the cards? Let's talk about that. Joining me now to break it all down is Euro Pacific's John Brown and New Edge Group's Larry McDonald. Gentlemen, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. John, to kick us off here, first things first, tough labor data today. What should investors be paying attention to for next week?
Oh, for next week, I'll be continuing to look at treasuries to see when the investors will finally wake up to the fact that it's one of the biggest bear traps in history. And, of course, I will be pursuing gold and silver, which we've been doing now for 11 years, and with handsome returns and even larger returns to come. But, of course, I disagree with Barton Biggs respectfully. I don't think we're another recession. We're just re-emerging from the original recession that was caused by the massive asset boom stimulated by Greenspan and camouflaged by quantitative easing. We're just in the same recession it's just going to go. And the big question is the government and the Fed going to try and re-camouflage it and postpone it with more fatal QE?
Larry, Egan-Jones downgrading this hour. Right after the market closed, they downgraded Italy to B+ from double B. What's your reaction?
Well, I mean, Europe's really leading us. It's been leading the market all year, all last summer. I think you got to look. I talk about this in my book, A Colossal Failure of Common Sense. When you have a financial shock like a Lehman Brothers, in the years following it, investors, business owners are much more cautious. And I think when you saw last summer, people were fearful of Europe. Employers started to really stop hiring people. The same thing's going on here. Employers are looking at Greece. They're looking at Europe. They're seeing these spreads. These are smart business owners, and they're pulling back. It's really a very serious problem.
Yeah, a serious problem.
Larry,
but I mean, yeah, go ahead, John.
But, Larry, isn't it really the Titanic struggle taking place on the battlefield of Europe between the Keynesian money debasers led by the Anglo-Americans against the German sound money Austrian school? This is the Titanic battle that could create a major currency crisis in the world, this battle over sound money. And this is the backdrop to everything we're looking at, this Titanic struggle within Europe.
Is that what you say?
I would agree, and but I think more importantly in terms of trading this market, Maria, you got to be so careful. I noticed this over the last week. Major politicians in Europe are talking to each other through the press. And you're seeing all kinds of head-to-head fakes. And you're right. There's people on both sides. There's massive Keynesians and there's hardcore conservatives that don't want to print money. And then you have the White House. This is the biggest threat to President Obama, what's happening in Europe. He's putting tremendous pressure behind the scenes on the Federal Reserve to act and really provide more Keynesian-type solutions.
Why is it on the Fed? I mean, why is it all on the Fed to stimulate the economy? How about tax policy and energy policy and some of the things that the federal government could be doing to actually fix the economy?
If you remember last December when you had the LTRO, you also had the swap lines were increased. My friends in Washington tell me that Mr. Bernanke has talked with senior senators in the last week or so about, just in case this thing gets bad, you're going to have to increase those swap lines from the Fed to the ECB. That provides them with more liquidity. It's more Keynesian-type solutions. But I think that's what's going on behind the scenes.
John, what do you think?
And that's the great message. I totally agree with Larry. And these are the hidden subsidies that American taxpayers are giving to the Europeans in fighting a battle which is going to depreciate every dollar they hold. And that is why gold and silver are headed so strongly upwards in the future. It's like the lifebelts on the Titanic. They look small viewed from the Titanic, but anyone who got out of the lifeboat back onto the Titanic, which is U.S. Treasuries, was going to be killed.
Bernanke set to testify before the Joint Economic Committee Thursday next week about the economy. This is going to be watched by the markets. What do you think we'll hear from him? I think he'll suggest, yeah.
Fascinating, because he is the architect, the Keynesian architect of the most massive asset boom in history and the resulting recession that we're now enduring, which is camouflaged by more quantitative easing. It's going to be fascinating to see how he wriggles out of this responsibility.
And Larry, is the U.S. going the way of Europe?
Well, I mean, Europe is really, this whole problem goes back to 2008. It is an extension. This is definitely a slowdown in the U.S. that's driven from Europe, and the market itself, the economic numbers and the stock market itself are being driven by the systemic risk that's coming out of Europe. It's not the 90s. We're in the 21st century, and as we saw from Lehman Brothers, systemic risk is so serious that it really affects all investors globally in a much more kind of cohesive way.
So, I mean, bottom line, do you think the U.S. is going to head into a recession then, Larry?
I think politically, President Obama has so much pressure on himself for this election. I think the Fed, I think there's going to be so many political pressures to come up with another bazooka. I think we might avoid one, but just because of the political pressures. If not, this problem could throw him right out of office.
Yeah, it's camouflage.
What about camouflage, John?
Well, the QE is just camouflaging the real recession.
Yeah.
And it's hiding it, really. And that's what's so interesting about Greenspan's speech, in my view. Is he going to wriggle out of it or not?
We'll be watching.
I don't know.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
He's the man responsible for the recession.
Well, we will hear what he has to say next week in that regard. Thank you so much, John Brown, Larry McDonald. We'll see you soon, guys. Have a good one.